Well, I made it, Rovul said to no one. His companions, even his horse, had died days ago, and there was no one to hear him blabber on now. Then he added, "So this is definitely not a time to panic," which was a mistake, as of course he began panicking immediately. I should have been panicking this whole time, he thought. He sucked in lungfuls of the acrid air as he stared out at what could only be described as hell. The holdfast of the firebrand drawns was worse than imagined, and he'd spent the past 2 weeks coming up with steadily worse and worse imaginings. The flame spike, where their king made its lair, towered above the surrounding crags like a leviathan's fang, sticking through the crust of the world from underneath. Lava ran in channels all over the mountain like hot blood, eventually pouring into an abyssal crevice at the base, traversed only by a crudely formed basalt bridge. The heat from the lava was overwhelming even from here, half a mile or more away. Rovul wiped sweat from his forehead with the frayed edge of his cloak and forced himself to remember why he was there. He was Angison's last hope of salvation. At least one of its final hopes anyway, he thought. Maybe Shavar Quickfinger could convince the Kirin to come to Angison's aid. Rovul prayed that he could anyway, as the chances that Rovul could convince the inscrutable firebrand drawn to stir from their lands was laughable, preposterous, and practically without precedent. The drawn were found only here in all the known lands, and here they had always stayed, other than occasional raiding parties. But then 10 years ago, their envoy Okana had come, somehow already knowing the rudiments of the common tongue. It was Okana who had established the guidelines of peaceful trade between humans and drawn, where livestock, worked steel, and technology of all kinds were left at the trading post to be replaced within a week by ore and precious gems. Firebrand drawn raiding parties still killed humans from time to time, but the twin kings of Angison permitted no attempt at retaliation, and after Okana had gone back to the holdfast to die, there had been no attempt at interaction. Until now. "Why did I want to study drawn?" he asked aloud for the 1,000th time. "Or fire magic?" He sighed. The answer to the second part was mainly because he had nearly burned down his house as a child and was actually quite afraid of fire and wanted to protect himself from it. Once he'd learned Fire Ward, the next spells in the chain had been so easy for him that he'd received a proficiency merit from the Chancellor himself. It wouldn't have made sense to switch after that. Studying drawn had been an unrelated attempt to learn something so uselessly academic that he could eventually become a professor, not a critical envoy. He'd wanted to stay at the academy forever, but instead had accidentally made himself into an ideal ambassador to this place. He gathered his will to cast a fire ward, but a voice spoke out in the gathering gloom, startling him so badly he nearly fell over. "Do ye seek to treat with the drawn wizard?" Rovul pulled his cloak's hood up from where it had fallen over his eyes as he jumped. He looked toward the voice, his eyes parsing shapes in the twilight. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice somehow both trembling and querulous. "Where are my manners? My name is Jardel, the betrayer," said a booming, dusty voice, and before Rovul's widening eyes, an enormous man-shaped creature stood up from the low ridge just below and to the right of where Rovul stood. "You're a fire giant!" Rovul squeaked. "Aye, that I am, and come like you, methinks, to seek the aid of the king of the drawn."